Welcome, everyone. This is To Your Greatness with Dawn Mathis, and I am Dawn Mathis, the owner of In Situ LifeWorks. And today we have with us once again Reverend Dr. Michelle Medrano from Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado. She is also, other than working at Mile High Church, she is also the author of the best-selling book, Resolve Your Fears, Activate Your Spiritual Immune System. So, Dr. Michelle, like I said, was a previous guest on the podcast about fear. And today she's with us covering another much needed topic, forgiveness. Because you see, there is in the land of our vision a gap. We have our current set of circumstances, our current results in our life, where we are right now, today, and where we want to be in the land of our vision and our dreams fulfilled. So there's that gap. And there are 3 stumbling blocks that can accost us in this gap when we're on our way from our current life to the life we would love to live. The first is fear and paradigms. And we have talked about paradigms and we've talked about fear. And as I mentioned, Dr. Michelle addressed fear on her first guest appearance with us. So today we're going to talk about the second block, lack of forgiveness. And this is part 1 of a 2-part series. And I am so grateful and so eager to get started with this with Dr. Michelle. Dr. Michelle,
Thank you. It's
welcome.
great to be here. I'm not sure how come I get the first 2 F words in your series here.
Well, at least they have more than one syllable. You know, it's not the single
That's true.
syllable F word.
That's true.
Um,
Mhm.
that comes that comes sometime later. I'm not sure how we're going to cover that, but I'm sure we'll figure out how to fit it in. So Dr. Michelle, can you tell us from your own teachings what forgiveness is
Mm.
and what it does?
Yes, for me, in my world, in my teachings, in my life personally, I see forgiveness as a way to set ourselves free. My very favorite quote about forgiveness has mostly been attributed to Carolyn Mays. Now, I'm not sure if she's the one who originally said it. Uh, I've heard other people attribute other authors or speakers to it, but here's how it goes. Hanging on to resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. Yeah. So,
Ooh.
what happens in our life, of course, is that things occur that are hurtful. We're betrayed, we're abused, we're neglected, we're spoken to in a way we don't like. People do things that hurt us or harm us. We have all had it happen. And then what happens is that we get caught up in hanging on to resentment or grudges, anger, frustration about that occurrence. And so forgiveness is a state that we find ourselves in, that we have to, in many cases, in most cases, I think, consciously choose to work with ourselves such that we can look back on that situation and not wish that it were different. Now, um, like
Mm.
being in unforgiveness is sort of like the essential notion of suffering that the Buddhists put out. Like we're attached to the past being different than it was, and we can't ever change that. So we suffer. We suffer. The person whom we're upset with doesn't suffer from our unforgiveness, but we suffer because we're hanging on to this grudge that is full of toxicity and anger, and it may be
Mm.
very justified, and I get it. But when we ultimately surrender and become willing to say, how can I let this go? What I think we have to understand is that
Mm.
forgiveness is surrendering that past experience, and what it does is it frees us. It frees us to be in the now moment. It frees us to get on with our lives and not have that past experience in our field, if you will, of consciousness, our field of energy, and create a whole new experience of living if we're willing to do it.
Mm, wow. Wow, very well said. So, and I believe this is your belief as well, is that we're in a sea of energy, we're in a sea of vibration, and lack of forgiveness is not on the frequency or vibration of the life we would love to
No,
live.
no, I think because if we are suffering from unforgiveness, we the vibrational energy, and even if people are listening who aren't sure about that, they feel maybe that's a little too woo woo from them. What we even know about our brains and the way our brains work is that our brains are like a big huge Google search engine. So if I am constantly in the space of being
Mm,
a victim and blaming and in resentment and anger from my past, I'm seeing life through those eyes and my awareness will constantly go to why I can't have what I want, why I can't be who I want to be, who's keeping me back down, or even the worst case will attract to me more situations like this. Now, while I say that, I also
yes.
believe fervently, and I want listeners to really understand this, that sometimes forgiveness takes a little time to get to. If we have been severely
Mm,
hurt or betrayed by someone, we are not saying, well, the next day you just forgive. No, that is not how it
yeah.
works. Forgiveness is a process, it's a journey, but there does come an awakening moment with every betrayal or suffering for those of us who are wanting to have the life we want to live, where we start to wake up to the fact that I can't have the life I want to live, be as free and fully expressed as I want to be if I keep hanging on to being a victim about that thing from my past. There
Mm.
comes a moment, you could a wake up moment, a wake up call, a cosmic two by four, a come to Jesus moment, a come to Buddha moment, a come to whatever moment where people start to go, I gotta let this go. I have to, for my sake, I have to let this go. And so it's important, but it is a process. It can be a journey.
So, so the person that it truly benefits
Is
is us. If we have been wronged, it's
no,
not for the other
it is.
person, it's for
It is.
us.
Now, of course, forgiveness does improve my relationships, especially if I'm still in a relationship with someone who's hurt me. Say, for example, my spouse or my partner or
Mm,
my beloved. If I've been hanging on to resentment, it's going to poison the well of that relationship for sure. And my willingness to
mm,
forgive,
mm,
because it shifts me, it makes me be different in the life of that relationship, and it can free up energy between two people. But in terms of why I do it,
mm,
I'm not ever doing it for that other person, and nor am I in forgiveness condoning that person's behavior. I'm never saying, well, forgiving you means it was okay that you did what you did. I may still, out of love for
mm,
myself, need or want to have a boundary where I can forgive someone and still never see them again. I can forgive someone and still say, I'm not comfortable with them
mm,
being in my life. But there's a difference between saying, I forgive you and I'm not comfortable with you being in my life versus I forgive you and you are a horrible person whom I hate. There's a big difference, right? And so, and that's the impact to us and I've seen it in action in my life personally. I've watched people around me forgive. I have personally gone through a lot of forgiveness in my life of people who hurt, betrayed, abused me, and it has allowed me to just come into more aliveness the more I practice it.
mm. Wow. Wow. So we're spiritual beings and we're having this human experience. Spiritual beings having a human experience. So, which part of us is the part that needs that forgiveness, that requires being forgiven, or
I
forgiving
think
others?
both parts. I don't think it's either or. I think that
Ah,
from a human nature, um, we feel better about ourselves, our self esteem rises, our ability to, like, victimhood and blame from a perspective and a vibrational energy are the lowest vibrations, I think, in terms of the human experience.
Mm,
That people who live,
yes.
and it always surprises me that there are people who believe that something that happened to them 30, 40 years ago, they're not going to forgive it. They hang on and they chew on it and they hang on to it as though it's a badge of honor. You know, Carolyn Mays used to say, are you
Mm,
leading into your relationships with your suffering, with your pain? Hi, my name is Michelle.
mm,
I am the child of abuse and witnessed domestic violence in my home. If that's the first thing I'm leading with when I'm meeting people, or I'm thinking I can't wait to get that into the conversation so people see how hard it's been for me, that energy is just a it's a from a
mm,
psychological standpoint as a human being, from a self-esteem standpoint as a human being, from an ego standpoint as a human being. It doesn't serve me in my relationships or in my ability to move
mm,
forward with what I want to do, because it's just always the mindset that I come from. And from a spiritual perspective, here's the thing that I think is really shocking sometimes to people. The universal presence, the divine that I believe in, the God that I believe in, and even the God that Jesus talked about and many spiritual teachers have talked about, that God is a loving God. In the New Testament, Jesus came to bring a covenant of love and talked of a God that loved us all no matter what we'd done, the most unconditional loving presence there is. Now, that isn't always the way
mm,
Christianity portrays God, but that's, I think, what Jesus was trying to say. And so, from a spiritual standpoint, the more as a spiritual being, learn to forgive and let go, the more I'm being God like. I'm living my life the way God lives, in that there's nothing you or I or any human being has ever done that has kicked us out of the kingdom of heaven, has kicked us out of God's love and
mm,
acceptance. And I remember one of the first lessons I had about this is after I had my son. I have one child, and this child was born, and I remember being overwhelmed with this amazing parental love, and still am for this child. I don't always like the things he does or the things he says to me or other people. I don't always agree with how he chooses to live his life. He and I are vastly different, opposites in many ways. But I know there is one thing I could tell. You know, he could go and do the worst thing you can imagine, and I would be shocked, upset, frustrated, and maybe even angry at him. But this deep love that I have for him, it's not going away. I will always love this being. And I
mm,
realized, if I can love that way, why can't that which created us all love that way of myself and all other beings?
mm,
So when we choose to love, where we say to ourselves, no matter what you did, I'm going to even try to understand what you did. I might try to put myself in your shoes. I might try to have a I might try to think about how I might forgive you, how it might be that you did what you did. That might help, um, and get to this place of compassion, even about the worst offenders in our life. We are then more in alignment with our divine nature, and therefore we are being more spiritually connected and happy. So I think it's human and spiritual that this benefits us.
yes. I love that. Thank you for that explanation. So there's something called A
Mm-hmm.
Course in Miracles, and I admittedly have not attended that entire course. And do you offer that
Not
at
right
your
now.
at Mile
We
High
used to
from
have a
time to
Course in
time?
Miracles group, and I think they stopped meeting. Might have been around
Okay.
COVID, so I'm not sure how long ago it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know you have a vast um, calendar of events, both online and in person. And um, since I'm talking about it, what is the website that people could go to check out the courses that you have that come up, whether it's forgiveness or prosperity or Course in
Well,
Miracles?
thank
What
you for
is that
asking. Our
website?
website is milehighchurch.org, and high is spelled HI, like hi. So it's milehighchurch.org. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Not the other high.
Not the other high.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Okay. Well, going back to the Course in Miracles, there was a quote that I've seen from the Course of Miracles about forgiveness, and I want to read it so I don't mess it up. Forgiveness is a shift in perception that removes a block in me to my awareness of
Yes.
love's
I love that.
presence. Yeah, can you expound on that a little bit? That's a
Yes.
lot of
Well,
words.
here's the thing. I can expound on that from maybe sharing a personal experience. Yeah.
Sure, that's the
So
best.
I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I was raised with two parents who were very young when they had me. They were 17 and 18 respectively. My father was a very controlling rageaholic who regularly beat my
Mm,
mother and beat her before I was even born, when she was pregnant with me, and after I was born. And I saw lots of violence in my home. I was scared of my father. He threatened me all the time. And then, yeah, when my mother
goodness.
finally, after 14 years of this, finally was able to extract herself from the marriage and take her three children out of it, then my father disappeared on us. I felt like I didn't get to see him much, and I was really angry with him. And I spent a lot of time working on my anger with him and knew that he was the primary person that I needed to learn to forgive. And I worked a lot on that when I found Mile High Church. I was 15 years old and I started taking classes when I was 18, and I started doing therapy and doing all sorts of stuff to
Mm,
really work. And I realized that at the core of my issues was going to be this, what felt like huge mountain of things I was upset with my father about, that I was going to have to forgive. And one of the things that really pushed me across that line was was having a child myself. As I mentioned earlier, that was transformational in not only my ability to love, but I had already begun to realize, okay, my father was raised in a family where he was taught how to be a father by a very dysfunctional man. And then my father took on the
mm,
mantle of just doing what he knew. When I had my son, I was 35 years old, and it was hard. It was hard work as a parent, especially as my
mm,
son got older and started having his own will and wanting to do his own thing, and wanted to talk back, and wanted to didn't want to put his shoes on when it was time to go to school. Just little things in the day as I was rushing around being busy, and it really dawned on me, gosh, I'm having a hard time, and I have committed to being a loving parent. I've done all this work on myself, and still, it's not always easy to be this loving, kind, uh, easygoing parent. And my father was 18 years old, had been modeled all
oh,
of this dysfunctional behavior from his father. And what happened is it pushed me over the line in terms of my total compassion for, wow, that must have been hard. I can't even imagine how hard that was. And I felt my heart just
mm,
open, and it really was like a part of me was stuck in this timeline of my childhood and my teen years, angry with my father, and it felt like it returned me to the love that I am, and I became more in integrity, more whole, by just letting go
mm,
and having the littlest
yeah,
bit of compassion and being willing to forgive him. And it changed my relationship with him forever. It was like, okay, yeah. So that's what that
yeah,
quote kind of reminds me of, that the willingness to do that
yeah.
returns us to the love that we really are, because I could love him then and respect him more and understand more.
Well, and he wasn't in the work
Yeah.
that you were in, and you were
Yeah.
older. Yeah, and I heard you say something about compassion. I think compassion is the
It really
beginning
is.
of
And there are
forgiveness.
so many ways to open the door to compassion. But I do think that sometimes we have to ask ourselves tough questions. Like, we sometimes hold people in
Mm.
anger and resentment when we ourselves have done exactly what they've done to us. Or, if we're honest, we
Oh
would
yeah.
possibly do exactly what they did to us if we were in their shoes. Or as Oprah says, if they'd known better, I think
Yes.
Mary Morris even says this, if they'd known better, they would have done better. And so giving people an understanding
Yes.
that people are often scared, ignorant, full of fear themselves, and out of that will make very poor choices. And parents especially were often
Yes.
parented by people who taught them horrible patterns and behaviors. You know, we all got horrible things from our parents, and we will pass them on until someone has the courage to say, you know, it stops here. I'm going to be the one to stop it.
Yeah.
And the first step I'm going to take to stop it is I'm going to forgive the people who did it to me. And that will free me from the pattern so I don't repeat the pattern to anybody else. Otherwise, if I'm full of this anger and resentment and this sense that you should never do what they did to me, then I'm going to be tempted to have that in my energy and
Mm.
behave in exactly the same way towards my kids, my spouse, whatever. So the pattern interrupt is often
Mm.
compassion and forgiveness.
Yes. Wow. Very powerful. Well, thank you for your example, your stories, your wisdom, and
My
your
pleasure.
insights. Um, yes, very, very powerful. I just love this topic. So, like I said, this is part one of a two-part series. And so, when we come together again with Reverend Michelle, Dr. Michelle, we're going to talk about some practices or some key ways we can interrupt our unforgiveness, our anger, and to help us on our journey to forgive, not just other people, but ourselves. So make sure you tune in next time. This is To Your Greatness with Dawn Mathis. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Michelle, thank you for being
Thank
here
you.
with us. And we'll see you all next time. Take care.